Hold on now. You mean to tell me, listen to this list of teams here. Stanford, Washington, Oregon, Miami, Michigan State, Wisconsin. You mean to tell me out of that list of teams, not a single one of them is ranked? Not a single one? How's that possible? I don't know how it's possible, but it is. These teams have all found a way to do it. It's time for another preview and prediction video today, and I'm going to talk about all those teams and several more too in today's preview and prediction video. But before we get started, let me give a special shout out to all the new Patreon members who joined during the month of October. And I just want to recognize you guys real quick, then we'll get right into the video. Skylar B, Ken G, Chad T, Brian H, Martin R, Austin P, Colin G, Zach V, Brad G, Shane R, Evan Von W, Stephen S, Chris M, Victor G, Tina S, Grant H, John M, Victor F, Melon Matt, Henry S, Gordon F, Cameron W, Kyle T, Mike A, David H, and Aaron H. Thank you guys so much for joining me over on the Patreon page, and a special thanks to all you other guys who have been there prior to the month of October. I wanted to give a special shout out to the ones who joined last month. We are live streaming the second half of the Georgia-Kentucky game this Saturday for Patreon members. So all you guys who have joined up on the Patreon page, make sure you check the Patreon page this Saturday about 15 or 20 minutes before kickoff. I will post a link on the Patreon page to a private unlisted live stream on YouTube. You'll just click the link and it'll take you right to the live stream. You guys can watch along with me as we watch Georgia hopefully win the SEC East. I live streamed the first half of the Georgia-Florida game last week for the Patreon members. Got a lot of great responses, so we're going to do the second half this week, Georgia and Kentucky, and hopefully you guys will get to see a big Uncle Lou celebration as that game winds down. Hoping my dogs can clinch the East this week. Anyway, let's get right into these previews. Hey, yeah, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, and thanks for watching. I really appreciate it also, and too, I did an SEC preview on Tuesday where I ran through all the SEC games for this coming up week, talked about them and gave a prediction against the spread. Did the same thing for the top 25 teams yesterday. Today, I'm going to do another list of games that they're not SEC teams and they're not ranked, but they're interesting to me for one reason or another, and I named some of the teams at the beginning of this video that we'll be talking about. Now, as usual, this preview and prediction video is sponsored by the good people over at betnow.eu. There's a link in the description of this video. If you click that link, it'll take you over there, and they're going to get you set up for all your college football betting needs for the entire 2018 season. When you get signed up over there, make sure you enter the bonus code Uncle Lou. That's one word, all lowercase letters, Uncle Lou, and they're going to give you a 100% bonus on whatever you deposit. Good luck. All right, here we go. You guys know the routine. I'm going to start with some noon games. We're going to work our way up to some prime time games. There's some good ones here. Now, these, like I said, these teams aren't ranked, but there's some pretty good teams here and some interesting matchups here for this coming weekend. We're going to talk about them now. 12 o'clock over on the Big Ten Network. Rutgers at Wisconsin. How is Wisconsin? What a disappointment they've been. Jonathan Taylor, pretty good year, a little over 1,100. I think he's got like 1,150 yards rushing. He's averaging 6.6 yards a carry. So it's not like he's having a bad year, but nowhere near the pace that we saw him get last year when he went over 2,000 as a freshman. And the guy just can't hold on to the ball. He's got to do something like that because the NFL, that's a big deal in the NFL. It's a big deal anywhere, but that's going to hurt him. It's going to hurt his draft stock. It's going to hurt his NFL future, in my opinion, if he doesn't learn to hold on to the ball. Way too many fumbles for Jonathan Taylor. And this guy, I mean, I'm kind of disappointed. This is one of my favorite players from last year. He's sort of taking a step back this year, but he's only a sophomore. He'll be back next year. We'll see what he can do. But anyway, Wisconsin, obviously a huge favorite here at home, a 28.5-point favorite. Rutgers is just a terrible, terrible team. They may very well be the worst Power 5 team in America. Yeah, there's some other bad ones out there, but Rutgers has just been absolutely horrible. They're 1-7 this year. Their only win is against Texas State. They're averaging 15 points a game. You look on their offense, 130 rush yards a game, 130 pass yards a game, for a total of about 260 yards per game of offense. Just absolutely terrible. Wisconsin losses, of course, to Michigan, Northwestern, and BYU. Their best win, Iowa. Wisconsin is winning this game, and we all know that. Wisconsin's got a great home field advantage, not that they need it against Rutgers, but it's one of the tougher places to play in the Big Ten for sure. 28.5 is a lot of points. Wisconsin has not blown many people away this year, but Rutgers really is that bad. I'm going to take the Badgers. I'm going to lay the 28.5. And I think you're going to see a theme here in this video with some of these teams who have fallen off the map, really. I think this is going to be, I mean, I don't want to call it a bounce back weekend for a lot of these teams because the season is pretty much over for the majority of these teams. I mean, if you're not even ranked at this point in the season, you have to say it's going to be a disappointment no matter how it ends up. But you're going to see a theme in this video, I think, of teams that have really disappointed this year that I think are going to have big games this weekend, starting with Wisconsin. Give me the Badgers. Lay the 28.5. All right, here's another team that's next to impossible to figure out. 12 o'clock, this one on ESPN2. Michigan State travels to play at Maryland. Michigan State, what is going on with them? 5-3. They beat Penn State and Purdue. I mean, they're up and down. They had like 20 returning starters from last year. Really high expectations. I mean, people had Michigan State right in the same category as Ohio State, Penn State, and Michigan when this season started in terms of the 4 teams that you thought had a shot there in that division. Turns out Michigan State is probably the worst of those 4, but they're probably better than everybody else in that division. They're a 3-point favorite on the road at Maryland here. Maryland's also 5-3. Lot of distractions at Maryland all year, really. They were able to not hide those distractions, but I think sort of mask them a little bit. With Durkin being on the sidelines, and what's the guy's name that took over there? Is it Matt Canada? The old, I believe it's Matt Canada, the old OC under Orgeron at LSU at Maryland. He's sort of been running that team. But of course, this week Maryland announced their decision on their real head coach DJ Durkin and whether they were going to keep him or fire him. It's a huge press conference. Oh, we had a big meeting. We talked about it. Blah blah blah. We're going to keep him. Huge public outlash. I mean, people couldn't believe it. I mean, if you don't know the entire story, Maryland had a player die back in April or May. I believe it was May. And they were accused of all sorts of bad practice habits. I don't really know how to describe it. You Google the article and read it if you want some more information on the Durkin story. I spent a lot of time talking about that in the offseason, so I don't want to completely rehash it here. But the point is, they were able to sort of get around a lot of those distractions during the first part of this season because Durkin was out, the new guy was in. Well, then this week they announced they're going to keep DJ Durkin. People go nuts. I mean, on SportsCenter they can't contain themselves. What is Maryland doing? The dumbest decision ever. Blah blah blah. Well, fast forward 24 hours after they announced they're keeping Durkin, and turns out they changed their mind. They were just kidding, whatever, and now they decided to fire him. So it's been a lot of distractions at Maryland this week. They've been a pretty good team, especially considering all the off-the-field stuff that's gone on surrounding the death of that player and some of the weird practice habit type things they had going on. Like I said, just read the article. But nevertheless, they've been an okay team. But Michigan State only a 3-point favorite here at Maryland. This is way too low to me. You can add this to the couple of games I named yesterday as what I consider to be a guaranteed winner here. Give me Michigan State and lay the 3. I don't see any way Maryland shows up this weekend ready to play after everything that's gone on there. And I do think Michigan State is a better team than the record indicates. Like I said, they've lost to some, they beat some good teams. They've lost to some good teams up and down. I think they're up this week. Give me the Spartans on the road, lay the 3. Oh, man, this makes me happy here. Georgia Tech at UNC. Georgia Tech's a 7-point favorite. This one comes on 12 o'clock on the ACC network, so good luck finding it. I don't know what else to tell you. Listen, Georgia Tech started off absolutely horrible. First 2 or 3 weeks of the season for Georgia Tech really couldn't have been any worse. And bad news for me, after those first 2 or 3 weeks, Georgia Tech started talking about firing Paul Johnson. Obviously, I can't have that. I got to have Georgia Tech keeping Paul Johnson forever. I support this guy 150%. He's a great fit at Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech should love him and cherish him. I went on a rant for a couple of weeks there where I was, Georgia Tech needs to win. I really want Georgia Tech to win. Well, thank God they listen to Uncle Lou every day like they're supposed to. They've won a few games here. What are they up to now? 4-4. They're going on the road here to play North Carolina. They can give Rutgers a run for the money for worst team in America. They're 1-6. Georgia Tech, meanwhile, has won 3 of its last 4. North Carolina's lost 4 straight. They're allowing 190 rushing yards per game. Georgia Tech is getting 360 rushing yards per game, though. That's not a good combination if you're North Carolina. Here's another one. I mean, look, what am I not seeing here? With 7 points, that's it for Georgia Tech? Give me Georgia Tech and lay the 7. You could lay the 17, couldn't you? Again, North Carolina is allowing 190 rush yards a game. That's terrible. Georgia Tech is getting 360. North Carolina's a terrible team. How is this a 7-point spread? I don't know. Same thing with Michigan State. Give me Georgia Tech, the 2 road favorites in a row here. Georgia Tech will roll. Coach Paul Johnson may end up with a raise and an extension, but it don't get no better than that for Uncle Lou. Give me Georgia Tech, lay the 7. How about this surprise team here? Georgia Southern. Yeah, a lot of people that watch this channel are Georgia Southern fans for obvious reasons. But they go on the road, play at Louisiana Monroe, UL Monroe. This one's on ESPN3, so the internet, that's it. Georgia Tech 7-1. Huge win last week against App State. App State was ranked coming into that game, 25th. Georgia Southern knocked them off, and it wasn't even close. What was the final score? 34-14, something like that. It wasn't a close game. Georgia Southern, a really, really good team. Kind of surprised they weren't ranked this week. But listen, if they win this week, I think they're going to have to crack the top 25. I just think they're going to have to. I don't know how you keep an 8-1 team. They're 7-1 now. They win this week, they'll be 8-1. Their only loss is to Clemson, for Christ's sake. It wasn't close to Clemson. I think, what they lose by 25 points, something like that. But look at Clemson's last 2 games. They're beating people by 50 and 60 points. I mean, Georgia Southern put up a better game against Clemson at Clemson than Florida State put up against Clemson in Tallahassee. Georgia Southern is a good team. On the road at UL Monroe, only 7.5. This is the 3rd road favorite in a row. I like them again. Give me Georgia Southern, lay to 7.5. All right, on to some primetime games here, 7 o'clock over on ESPN2. The Dukies go on the road to play the Fighting Mark Ricks. The Hurricanes, yeah, the football Jesus is really reeling here. People hating on him left and right. Said he ain't got no business calling his own plays, trying to force him to hire a different offensive coordinator and let him call the plays. Man, this storyline sure seems familiar, doesn't it, Georgia fans? Just think back to around 2005, 2006. Same thing was happening at Georgia. Mark Richt wanted to call his own plays. Team was tanking. They forced him to hire an offensive coordinator, which ended up being Mike Bobo. Of course, the rest is history. But yeah, Miami is skidding bad right now. They're a 9.5-point favorite in this one. They're 5-3. Duke is 5-3. Duke started off pretty good. A little rough over the last couple of weeks. But this Miami game, just like the Wisconsin game, like I mentioned, I'm picking some teams that have been disappointing this year so far to sort of have bounce back weeks. I think Miami gets a big home win this week. Listen, if things go wrong this week and Miami loses this game against Duke, Mark Richt's going to have to go into hiding. Real talk. Miami Hurricane fans have just about had enough of this guy already. If he can't beat Duke at home, that is not a good sign. I think Miami pulls it together this week, circles the wagons, rallies the troops, whatever you want to say. I think Miami gets a big home win. I'm going to lay the 9.5 again. I'm picking every favorite here. That's a recipe for disaster. Better not listen to me at all. Better not take any of my advice on this video. Never good when you're picking this many games, and so far you picked all favorites. Not good, but I'm going to do it again. Give me the Hurricanes at home. Lay the 9.5. All right, UCLA on the road at Oregon. Another disappointing team here, Oregon, a team that had preseason hopes and dreams of maybe winning the Pac-12 and getting a shot at the playoffs. They're 5-3 after a couple of disappointing losses. UCLA 2-6, terrible team. Chip Kelly's first year there. This game's 7:30 Fox. Oregon's a 10-point favorite. Now UCLA 2-6, but they started out what, 0-4? They've won 2 of their last 3. Oregon, meanwhile, has lost 2 in a row. So they sit at 5-3, and Oregon is only 2-6 this year against the spread. So not only have they disappointed themselves, they've really come up short on what most people's week-to-week expectations have been for Oregon, even in the games they've managed to win. 2-6 against the spread is not good. I'm just not a believer in UCLA still. I'm not. Both these teams have lost 2 in a row. Oregon is just a better team than UCLA. I like Justin Herbert, Oregon's coach. Jury's out on him. This is his first year taking over for Taggart at Mario Cristobal. 10 points. I'm going to go with my Wisconsin to Miami theory here. I'm going to take a disappointing team to have a bounce back week. Give me the Ducks, late at 10. Oh my God. Now you can flip a coin here on which one of these two teams is the most disappointing. Stanford at Washington. Both 5-3. Stanford's 5-3, Washington's 6-3. Stanford's lost 3 of their last 4 games. Washington, just like Oregon, can't beat the spread. They're 2-7 against the spread, so they're just disappointing on every possible level. Washington's a 10-point favorite in this one, 9 o'clock on the Pac-12 network. What happened to Bryce Love? I talked a lot about Jonathan Taylor earlier. Bryce Love in that same category, just completely falling off the map. Now, Bryce Love, I don't think Bryce Love has 500 yards rushing all year. At least Jonathan Taylor's up around the 1,200 mark. So this Bryce Love just been terrible. Stanford's offense, defense, everything's have just gone sideways for Stanford this year. David Shaw got to get it together for next year, I guess. Washington, same story. Lose to Auburn week 1. People think it's a great loss. Fast forward to the middle of October. Not such a great loss. Yeah, turns out Auburn not very good. Washington goes ahead and loses a couple more games, too. They're not even ranked. Unbelievable to me. You're talking about a team that was preseason top 10 here in Washington. Weren't they 9th? In the first poll the preseason poll that came out? What a disappointing year for Washington with a team that's loaded with veteran players like Jake Browning at quarterback, Gaskins at running back, a great defense, good secondary, offensive line. It's hard to understand how Washington is 6-3. It really, really is. But they're 10-point favorite. They're at home. Stanford is that bad, in my opinion. Again, Wisconsin, Miami, Oregon, add Washington to the list. Bounce back weeks for disappointing teams. Washington gets a big win. Give me the Huskies at home, late at 10 points. All right, there you have it. The final preview and prediction video for this week. Tuesday we did the SEC. Wednesday we did the top 25. Today I ran through another list of games that's interesting for one reason or another. What's today? Thursday. Yeah, so live show tonight at 10 p.m. And I'm going to have a second video out today where I talk exclusively about the Alabama-LSU game and the Georgia-Kentucky game. Of course, both of these games are divisional title games, right? Whoever wins Alabama-LSU is going to win the West. Whoever wins Georgia-Kentucky is going to win the East. So after this Saturday, we will know who will be matched up in the SEC title game. I talked a little bit about those games on Tuesday when I did the SEC video, but I sort of just glossed over them because I have to talk about all the SEC games. And these are these are 2 huge games here. I mentioned in the other video, but I can't remember when there's been a weekend in the SEC this late in the season where there were 2 games that were this big. And both the favorites are on the road, right? Alabama's on the road at LSU. Georgia's on the road at Kentucky. You see a lot of upsets on the road in the SEC. These are 2 huge, interesting games that I think both the favorites in this case, whether they're willing to admit it or not, have to be a little bit nervous. You look at Kentucky, it's the biggest game at least in 30 or 40 years for Kentucky. LSU, everything on the line here. Alabama, their rival, they can't stand each other. LSU hasn't beaten Alabama in forever. LSU's had some huge home wins this year, namely over Georgia. LSU really, really thinks they can win this game. That's going to be a good one. Same with Georgia and Kentucky. But I'm going to make a second video about that today. It'll be out later this afternoon. So anyway, subscribe to the Uncle Lou channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and a lot of times they're even watchable. Give this video a thumbs up. That really helps a lot. Share it with your friends, and I'll see you guys later this afternoon. Have a good morning.